Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here. Welcome back to another lesson video. And today's lesson was inspired by something that I've been noticing over the past couple of weeks with various students. And frankly speaking, it's a topic that seems to bring itself up every so often when it comes to beginner improvisers or lesser experienced improvisers, and that is playing around with smaller ideas. Now, oftentimes the main issue I see with someone that's coming in and maybe is a little nervous about their improvising or they're not quite sure about what they're playing is that they start to play too much. And yes, I know this is kind of a variation on the classic less is more or more is more or whatever you want to call it. But as an improvising musician, there's a very extreme tendency to start playing more than what you would normally do, especially when you're uncomfortable. And this isn't just a comment on, my students or something I see many people struggling with, but it's also a critique of myself, and that's a tendency that I've had to fight against for the past year or two or so, really the past 2 years, to try calm myself down from naturally playing more when I'm in uncomfortable situations and relying on my chops. Now, working on this stuff can help you craft a more deliberate voice, give you more conscious melodic choices. And I think it's something that bears working on. Is the better you get, often the more deliberate you are with your phrasing choices. And I think that's something that can benefit anyone. So I'm going to dive into the mindset, things you should think about, and I'm going to give you one exercise before we dive into it. And also, because we seem to have got a bunch of new followers here over on Instagram, I'm forgetting which media platform I'm recording for. But seeing as we've got a bunch of new people over on Instagram, if you guys find your way here, please do consider subscribing and checking out the rest of the channel. There's plenty of stuff here aside from my usual art and performance videos. There's also some cool lesson content here. So with that said, let's dive right in. Now, the mindset is something that I actually empathize with. I completely understand. Usually what happens is I have a student come in. This was also partially inspired by a student I had yesterday who came in, improvised a bit over a tune, and it just wasn't, he was a little frustrated with himself. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I solve this problem? Or how can I offer a potential solution to this problem? And this is something I've even seen over the course of my personal in-person students who kind of maybe struggle with playing too many ideas. Now, I've noticed that this tends to come from a point of discomfort, and it's quite normal. When you're confronted with a lot of space, such as an improv or a blank slate, you might feel as if, I need to play something so that I'm considered legitimate, or I need to play something so that I'm actually playing. I need to play. I need to fill the silence. Otherwise, maybe intrusive thoughts can come into your mind and start making you question maybe your own self-worth as a player. However, funnily enough, the perception of how you play usually changes for the better the less you play and the more you work with. But specifically, working with smaller ideas. The principal issue being that sometimes when people start improvising, they start leaving very few spaces and their ideas are far too large. For example, that's a very large idea, and people are kind of obsessed about longer lines and longer phrases, when actually the secret to getting to longer lines is controlling very, very minuscule content. Now, even if I were just to improvise and talk, so I'm just going to continue a line. I feel like the key of B today. But you can... Personally, I find this quite annoying. And not in annoying when I see people doing this. I'm finding this frustrating as an improviser right now, because I'm actually finding it quite hard to think. See, I'm purposely slowing down there to give myself some more breathing room. And sure, even if I'm finger picking it, but even if I go maybe more of a double time, It's kind of frustrating for me as an improviser, especially because, I'm just having a tough time thinking. I'm having a tough time finding clarity in my mind to communicate an idea. And also, from a listener's perspective, I think if you're running on like that for every tune or every solo you play, you're probably not reaching out to your listener, which is important. So, oftentimes, paring down or phrasing, paring it down and making it simpler, not only makes it more digestible and all of that stuff that I think many people tend to default to, but I want to offer this as a solution for people who are maybe a little more anxious about improvisation. Slowing down will give your time, or give your brain time to catch up. Nice little slip there. But it will give your brain time to catch up and give you time to focus on clarity and maybe what you would like to communicate. So now with the mindset out of the way, I want to focus on an exercise. And you can apply this exercise either to a free improv setting, kind of like what I was doing with the intro, or you can apply it to a tune. And I'm going to go over the tune variation on over on Patreon. So if you'd like to check that out, feel free to check out the link in the description box. But I'm not going to talk too much about Motivic Development and all the things you can do to a phrase. I've spoken about it before here on the channel and talked about vocal phrasing and things like that. So please do go check that out. I'm going to link a couple of videos in the cards that might be helpful and pertinent to the topic. But the first thing you want to do if you're doing this is come up with a subject or a theme that you're going to work with. Here's the thing, you don't want a subject or a theme that is too long. The longer it is, the harder it is to keep track of your ideas, the harder it is to remember it, the harder it is to manipulate it, because you've just got such a big idea to work with. So let's say if I had a melody like... That's kind of a long melody for this exercise. You want something very simple. Make it borderline idiot-proof, right? So let's say it's something like... And I'm in the key of B. I haven't played in B in a while, but anyway. So take a simple idea, and what you're going to do is you're just going to push it about, and you're going to vary it. Now use all of your Motivic Development devices to kind of help you. As a brief recap, use your Motivic Development devices to help you mess around with this stuff. For example, if your idea is maybe a little bit longer, let's say it's... That's a nice little idea. Let's actually use that instead. And I'm going to assign a rhythm later. But you can experiment with the arc. You can experiment with the contour. Reverse the contour. You can change the notes about. Maintain the contour, but change the notes so that you have something that mirrors the arc of the line or the previous line. You can add notes, you can take notes away, you can augment the phrase rhythmically speaking, you can diminish the phrase, diminish the phrase rhythmically speaking, make it faster. There are so many things you can do with just a simple melody. But the important thing is that you've pared down your idea to something very simple, as opposed to... That's a lot of thinking to do at first, especially if you're lesser experienced, you want simpler ideas to start with. And then what you're going to do is push it through the key, or through whatever you're improvising with. For example, see that little change there? Return to the original idea. Using the same rhythm, but then changing the notes about. Fragmenting, right? All of this from just one idea. Now, what is this getting you to do? The bigger, as I said, the bigger your idea is, the harder it is to focus on the topic or the subject, because your brain can get scattered, you're focusing on way too many different things. What you can start doing is when you take a 3 or a 4 note cell, is you start focusing. and you start focusing on something that is very particular. So, let's try that again and see what else I can come up with. A little bit of a call and response. And be very clear about the ideas you're communicating. Let's say this is theme number 2, right? Sorry. Three, 1, 2, 3. And anytime you find a little nugget, and if you deviate, that's fine, but if you find a nugget that catches your interest or your attention, focus on it and develop it as much as you can. Right? So the moral of the story here being, and this is kind of what I want to close my point out on, because I thought this was a fascinating topic to discuss. If you find yourself getting a little nervous and you find yourself playing more out of nervousness and it's not a conscious choice for you to do so, that is a sign that there might be a problem. And that problem is maybe you're just a little too anxious about what you're going to play. Pare down your ideas, but also get equally comfortable with the space you're playing in. It's hard, I know. Trust me, I'm a guy who likes to play fast on occasion, play a lot of notes and a lot of lines and things like that. But one of the most important things I found was that paring it back gave my mind room to breathe. And also, it made my phrases, my faster phrases, stand out a little more, because now they're not focal points, they're little bridges, and because you don't hear them as often, it catches your ear, right? So if you're having a tough time improvising and you feel like nothing's going anywhere, and you feel like you're playing too many notes or you feel overwhelmed, try calm yourself down first, breathe, play a few notes, and use that little idea as your nugget to start moving and developing through changes or through your improvisation, whatever it may be. Bit by bit, you'll eventually get better at how to navigate this material and how to mess around with it. So, hope you enjoyed this little thing today. A little bit of a different lesson, but I think a topic that isn't really covered and probably should be covered more often. As I said, I'm going to jump onto Patreon and apply this to a tune or a set of changes, so feel free to jump on there with me if you'd like to see what I'm talking about over there. All right, until then, take care, guys.